I'm Sheard. Retired as lieutenant commander. When I was on the Saratoga, I was a second-class petty officer. In 1952, I joined the Naval Reserve in Silver Spring, Maryland. I was still in high school. A couple guys in my school, I was at that time Bethesda Chevy Chase High School in Bethesda, Maryland. I joined them, and the recruiter was talking to us. And I said, well, I didn't want to go to the Army. I said, I'll go to the Navy. Well, being in the reserves and still in high school, I was going once a month to drill. So my change from civilian life was kind of slow. And when I went to Bainbridge, well, I learned how to operate a teletype. And I had already been working in the post office with my civilian job in high school even. My last year I was only going to school 4 hours and then working at the post office. So I had that background already. But I learned how to operate a teletype at Bainbridge. So I never had some of the duties because I was doing the training, keeping track of stuff. Bainbridge was, I know we had the waves close to the unit that I was with, but I didn't do too much at Bainbridge because I took the train down to Washington where my parents were, back and forth. So I've been back to Bainbridge since then. Of course, it's not there. When I graduated from high school, I went on active duty. I also became a firefighter at the same time in 1953. I went up to the USS Cabot in Philadelphia in 1954. It was a small carrier. It had been hit twice by kamikaze. My job basically was painting and chipping. And one of the things I do remember, I was over the side on the boatswain's but doing the painting on the ship. Most of the time, it was just painting and chipping, nothing major. Although I got sick one day from it, was in the Philadelphia hospital, but I was there for about 8 hours or something like that. It wasn't that bad I was just a kid then, and we were living in a racks on shore. We didn't actually have to live on the Cabot. One of the things about the Cabot though, one of the pilots, we just found maybe 4 or 5 years ago, who was lost off the Cabot down in one of the southern islands. And his plane was found and his remains were sent back. The Cabot was a CVL-28. And the history of it, during World War II, she was hit, as I said, by kamikaze twice. She had a good history. When I left her, they changed it to this Cabot Diablo. They gave it over to Spain for a number of years. Then when they came back, I tried, as part of the Cabot history, she was in New Orleans, and we tried to get it as a museum, but the Navy and the money wasn't there for it. But she was, I think, torn apart down in Brownsville, Texas, if I remember correctly. When I left the Cabot, I was sent to school, so I didn't complete the program there. Then I was transferred from the Com Air Lant to Confib Lant, and was down at Little Creek, Virginia, at the Amphibious Forces for 2 years. And then I was sent back to Comairland. But in the meantime, when I left the cabin, I went to Bainbridge Naval Station, became a teletype operator, and my rate at that time was YNTE. In Little Creek, I was communications, teletype. I was also in the mail room. I also delivered mail, also was a truck driver, picking up mail from Norfolk to Little Creek. That was I also did shore patrol in Granby Street in Norfolk. It was just being like a police officer with walking up and down and making sure guys were okay. I really didn't have too much. I had more experience at the gate at Little Creek with officers at that time, which was interesting. Well, some of the officers would come back a little after having a few drinks and stuff, so it was interesting. But my mail route, I wrote, actually walked the mail for the enlisted quarters, which was right off of Little Creek, but I did the delivery of the mail there. At the same time, I was also with the Little Creek Volunteer Fire Department, and I spent a lot of time when I was not on duty with the fire department. It was only me in a little room. We had an ambulance and one fire truck. That was it. After Little Creek, I left on a train coming up to Brooklyn, which I'd never been to before. And as I said, when the cab took me out to the base, and the ship just went out into the snow. I couldn't even see the whole ship. And that was February, I believe. As I said, it just went out into the snow. I was second class at that time, so when they told me what I was doing, actually starting with the mail room, that was off the hangar deck. So I was exposed to that. And the guy that was in charge of the mail room was Ivy. I remember, he was the first class, I believe. And we did regular mail. I mean, we had 5,000 to 6,000 people on board ship. So we handled mail, stuff like certified mail and things of that nature. The mail is just like a mail room. Being a post office, we did this, all the mail coming in, mail being sent out. We would get the mail by, well, I either drove over when we were in Mayport, picked up mail, or we'd get it coming in by helicopter. And it was just interesting because everybody wanted their mail, and we separated it to various divisions. The post office, it was just like a small post office right off the hangar deck. Well, the one, we lost a registered letter, and we never did find that one. But we remember it coming in, but we couldn't figure out what happened to it. Whether it got in the trash or what, we don't know. To this day, we don't know what happened to it. But there was an investigation on that. But it wasn't that, nothing came of it. My only cruise actually on it was when we left Brooklyn, we had to lower the mast to get under the Brooklyn Bridge. We went there, went to Norfolk, and then down to Mayport. And I was going into Mayport. Well, for me, being master at arms, my food was always there. Anything I wanted. But food was good. We had 3 mess decks that they had to fill. I had to be on mess deck 3. We had the Marines, also the people that were in the lockup would come for that. And was early in the morning, you have to get up, but food was good. I can't complain. I learned how to cook with some of the stuff, and I've been cooking ever since. Just monitoring what was going on, basically, to make sure there was no problems, make sure the lineups were right, and stuff like that. It was very, very simple. As a second-class petty officer, which always liked second class, you had the authority, but yet you didn't have all the responsibility. So it was easy. When I was on the Saratoga, I was second class in the mail room, but also mess deck master at arms on the third deck where the Marines. I was aboard when Eisenhower came aboard. It's when we painted the ship from the gray to green and white because of Captain Moore getting ready for Eisenhower, doing the, I believe it was one of the festivals, I can't remember which one though. And we did the first day covers for Eisenhower. In fact, I still have one of them that I did back. That was interesting. Captain Moore, and I wasn't involved being a second class, but we redid the painting from gray to green and white, where he was going into officers' quarters. And that's when the cock got painted. But Captain Moore was good. It's the only time that I ever stood a inspection between the Protestant, Catholic service and the Protestant service. We had a inspection when he was coming aboard. But Eisenhower, I didn't meet him at that time, but later on when he became president, I was involved with his presidential parade in Washington, D.C., and also his funeral. And I've been to his home in Gettysburg. When she got ready to go to the Med, I was transferred from Mayport because of my time up. I think I was like 21 years old at that time because my, and I went over to Jacksonville Naval Air Station. My role was basically transporting mail from Jacksonville to Mayport, and then when I was at Jacksonville, I was just there, guarding some prisoners there once in a while, but other than that, I didn't do anything specific. I was a second-class petty officer, and I had the authority, but didn't have to do too much. And then I got separated from the Navy at Jacksonville, drove back up to Washington to my family. I stayed in the reserves, and when I went up to D.C., I went to the Naval Air Station Anacostia. And I was, as I said, I was with VP 661 and Nehru 661, which was, at that time it was a Cuban, so our P2Vs were doing a lot of flying over Cuba and looking at that. And I flew C-54 to Europe with the VP 661. And that was interesting because I was the only enlisted man in the unit. So I was responsible for the paperwork and stuff like that. But I was part of the crew unofficially. And I slept on the fuel tanks. Coming back while we flew around different places, Germany, Turkey, a couple of the delivering stuff. And coming back, we were in Spain. We left Rota. We lost our one, I think we lost radar at the time, so we had to fly around. Then coming up, we went up to Newfoundland. We had to lay down on the plane to fuel because of the snow and everything. And then coming down from Newfoundland to Washington, D.C., we had a door come open that was to prop games. And by the time we got down to D.C., it was cold and everything. And they just kind of put us through customs and said, okay, you've had it. Because it was quite a trip. Basically, it was P2V's patrols. As I said, I was the enlisted person, so I was not on any of the patrols, but I kept track of them. And it was during the Cuban crisis, and we did a lot of different things like camp. I would see the reports and stuff, so I was aware of certain things that came up. And I had my clearance. I was covered for, which I can't talk about. Went to Naval Air Station Anacostia with VP 661, NERU 661, and I was stationed there. Also became a firefighter at the station, at the Naval Air Station. And I was there until we quit flying there. It was interesting that I was driving crash trucks. I was also protecting the helicopters for the president at that time. And we used to take my MB-5 over to the Capitol when the president was flying on his helicopter. It was Marine One. When we closed the flying, I went with the Fire Marshal's office in Montgomery County, Maryland, as a fire inspector. But I stayed in the reserves until I completed 12 years with the Navy. And the Fire Marshal for the state of Maryland said, hey, Jerry, you come over to the Coast Guard as a first class. And so from second class, I went to the Coast Guard Reserve as first class. I was only first class 1 year, and I made chief. I completed my 20 years as a chief down at Yorktown, Maryland, or Yorktown, Virginia, excuse me. And I was at school. It was an environmental school, and the guys there knew that I'd made my commission request. So I went down as a chief, came back as an O2, lieutenant commander, retired in 1987. Okay, I was on the Reliance. Well, the Reliance I knew about, and when I went aboard her a couple times. My major request was when she hit the bridge. She had a problem. The only other thing I can remember is I was assistant on the bridge at one time, and we were looking at radar, and we saw 3 bips on the radar, and we started to go towards them to find out what it was. It turned out to be a tanker with just a mast showing, and we had no problem with it, man. But that's the way we used to look at things, because we were doing the fishery patrols at 200 miles from shore. And then we also did search and rescue. There, it was just going aboard a ship, looking at their paperwork and all. I did do both civilian and Coast Guard shipboard at Bethlehem Steel. I did facility inspections and looking for almost anything. I didn't get involved with any drug down in Florida because I was always up in the 5th District. With the Coast Guard, I was trained with both shotgun, pistol, well, we had the 45s at that time, and the M1s, because as a Coast Guard officer, a petty officer, we would go out on a boat with 3 people. And we were all armed at that time doing shore patrol, doing fisheries patrols. I went out, and I also did a lot of facility inspections. Most of my time was on small boats, 41-footers, 40-footers, but I was a training officer, so I didn't get out as much as some people. I was all administrative and training. In fact, when I retired in 1987, I was a training officer at Cape May for the reserve group. And that's, as a lieutenant commander, that's as far as I got. I could have gone further if I paid more attention to what was going on, but with 5 kids, I had enough to do. Well, the biggest one is the Navy, they can't go aboard any ship. As a Coast Guard person, I did fishery patrols. I can go aboard any ship. It's not a sign of war. But if the Navy went aboard, it's a sign of war. And it's still the same. So, as a Coast Guard chief and a Coast Guard officer, I had more power actually on the sea than any other police officers. We were the Smoky of the sea, actually. And the Navy, I like that because I was able to go, as I said, to Europe and stuff like that, which is a little bit different with the Coast Guard. It's up and down the East Coast and fisheries and stuff like that. That's the difference between the Navy and the Coast Guard, where the Navy, you only did what your ship did, but in the Coast Guard, you did a lot of other things. And we were in the smallest service, but we were all over the world. In fact, my duty station, if we'd gone to war, was Argentina. But we never got that far. To add to that, as the chief in the Coast Guard Reserve, I was involved with 3 presidential elections and 3 presidential funerals out of Washington, D.C. in various different, either a driver or I actually marched in one of them. Well, for Eisenhower, I was part of the Coast Guard contingent that marched in his parade. For Johnson, I was a driver for people he knew, so I got around. For Kennedy, I was also a driver, and had a brand new Pontiac, I remember that. And I still got my license plates that I had special. For the funerals, I was involved with the driving. For Kennedy, I was with the Fire Marshal's office at the time, and when he got shot, I pulled into a site and turned my speaker on, so the construction workers heard it. But then I was also part of his funeral as a chief petty officer. Marine One was, they brought the helicopters up from the Marine Corps for the president, and they were stationed near Anacostia, and they would go over to the White House or the Capitol. And DC didn't have a crash truck at that time, so we used to take one of our crash trucks over, and we didn't get close to them or anything, but we knew what to do in case something happened, let me put it that way. Because I was a civilian firefighter there at the Naval Air Station. Crash trucks has got foam on it, and it's to attack a fire on an aircraft. We practiced it with oil fires. One of the things we did do, which is unusual, the Naval Photographic Center was there, and they would give us all the old nitrocellulose film, and we would actually burn it. We'd hide behind a bolt, because that stuff used to go up just like, and it was very hot. But we burned, I reckon, maybe 3 or 4 times I did that. And then was responsible for anything coming in, flammable liquids, although I did more fire prevention inspections and stuff than most of the guys. And that's done all my life. When I was on the Saratoga, I was a second-class petty officer. To be one of the major aircraft carriers we've had in the country, that it served a number of years, 50 years, both in the Mediterranean and in the Pacific. She was very active in Vietnam. I think that her history of awards was great. It was a big ship. The Saratoga, like all the aircraft carriers today, it's a city. I mean, we had 5,000 to 6,000 people counting the air crew and everything. So you operate it like a city. Now, when I was on it, we had the guns. They took those off now. But I think the kids today, and I've used it when I talk to the kids at the Warren County Community College. It's something that they can look forward to. The Deuce carriers, of course, are a little bit better. I've been to Lakehurst where they are building the magnetic areas where you don't have steam anymore. But the Saratoga, it's got a history. If you look at it and ever looked at all the awards they got, why did they get them? And the fact that it was used by Eisenhower, it's something that's just like any other carrier or any other battleship. I mean, one of my best friends was on the battle wagon. He was on the New Jersey. In fact, my sea cadets go down to the New Jersey now for training by the Navy color guard. So it's hard to say how you want it. The problem I have is that the kids today don't understand what happened. They want everything to right now, don't realize that there's a history behind stuff.